If you're looking to break in, I think there's a huge amount of noise.
Great stuff, Matt. Thanks for coming on the Sales and Sports podcast. Tell us, who are you and what do you do?
Yeah, so I'm head of sales for Outmin. I've been there for about 16 months now. And Outmin is the market leader for AI bookkeeping. So it's all sort of focused around agentic AI. It's a direct human replacement for the bookkeeping space.
Interesting. And in terms of firms that you could work with, surely the market space is so big and so broad. Do you have like a set niche or sector you go after, or is it pretty much SMEs, any SME?
Yeah, for sure. So we're still very much SME focused. When we started out, we were sort of industry agnostic. We wanted to learn from the data. So basically do everything and then learn what works and what doesn't. We then made a pivot to probably hospitality about maybe 18 months ago. And we stuck with that for about 12 months. Since we've nailed that, we're now expanding into new territories. So we're looking at partnering with accounting companies. That's obviously a massive opportunity for us. So we've already got a fairly good deal size, but again, the opportunity with accounting practices and I guess the size of the problem that we're solving for them is just so significant. And that would be a really key channel for us. But then also expanding to new sort of direct sales channels as well. So retail, manufacturing. The options are endless for us. So.
Yeah. And I guess that sort of accounting space is so busy and you've got a lot of different software providers in the space. What makes Outmin so different? You mentioned AI.
Yeah, for sure.
What makes you guys different to anyone else?
Yeah, really good question. So, and it's one that I get asked quite a lot. It's quite an interesting one to get your head around. So, if you look at a piece of software, it's typically something that a person will use. So there's lots of accounting softwares out there, but as a user, I'm going to have to collect invoices, log into systems, type in numbers, type in words, allocate spend. Whereas with an AI agent or a tool like Outmin, so with agentic AI, it delivers the outcome for you. So you don't necessarily use it in the same way. You're not having to think about, what buttons do I press or what information do I have to put in or how do I do things?
Yeah.
All of the work is delivered for you, and all you get is the end result, which is clean books, tax filings, the reports, but obviously much quicker, at a much lower cost than having to hire a human, and equally without the human headaches as well, right? So no sickness, no holiday, no human mistakes. So
interesting, very interesting. I guess there's such a big market you guys can go after in the UK, but even abroad.
Yeah.
Is it just UK focused?
So we're UK and Ireland at the minute. We don't want to sort of run before we can walk. Yeah. We've made really, really good headway, which is really exciting. And then we just need to look at how we will grow. So part of it will be international expansion. We're looking at America already, and then other English-speaking countries. So it's a cool opportunity for the sales team. But equally, like additional product lines, it could be additional industries that we serve. It could be going up towards enterprise sales as well, and looking at how the product needs to shift to make that happen. So
love it. And I guess segueing slightly for the listeners, we were speaking about interviews just before we started recording.
For sure.
So we'll learn about your journey. We'll get into that, but we'd love to just start regarding interviews and interview processes. What interview advice would you give to someone who's got an interview in the coming weeks, coming months? What are you seeing that's working for SDRs? I guess you've hired and interviewed loads of people. What do the strongest SDRs or applicants do well?
For sure.
And what are any sort of hurdles or red flags when you're interviewing someone, and then maybe in the role as well?
Yeah, for sure. So in terms of what people can do to, I guess, give themselves the best chance, number one is land the job, right? So like make sure that you are doing everything you can to get that interview. Don't just rely on clicking a button and hoping for the best. Like actively go out there and make sure you can secure yourself that interview. Do your research. Like this is your opportunity to shine. So like make sure you know what the company does. Like make sure you know, ideally, like you've read some of their case studies maybe, who their customers are and what sort of problems they solve and where they fit into the market. Maybe you might want to look at who their competitors are as well. So you can have an intelligent conversation when you're in there. And that really stands out. It's very clear when someone has or hasn't done their research. I guess the other thing would be a lot of sales leaders will hire based on traits as opposed to on hard skills and experience. So like if there are specific traits that they've said they're looking for, make sure you've got, some prep work done. You can evidence exactly why you are hardworking, where you've shown that, where you are resilient, what evidence do you have for that, and so forth. But just as a word of warning on that as well, I would have it more as examples and pointers as opposed to like pre-scripted answers. So for example, I asked someone the other day, a simple question to you, tell me about yourself, tell me about your background, and then we'll see where the conversation takes us. And I got the most polished answer you could possibly imagine. And whilst that might be seen as a good thing, you could tell it was just word for word. It was very unnatural. Yeah. And obviously in sales, that's never going to happen, right? You're always going to get caught off guard. So I think it's making sure you know why they should hire you, know why you're going to be the right person for the job. You can sell yourself and have a natural conversation, but also, don't overdo it.
Yeah, interesting. Okay. So how would you answer that question? Tell me about yourself.
Oh, well, good question. So I'd say look at the traits and make sure you get as many of those in as possible and get the evidence in. Yeah. But don't just focus on that. Like, you're not hiring a piece of paper, you're not hiring a CV, you're hiring a person. So like, make sure you get some stuff in there about, what makes you unique and what interests you. So for me, if I was SDR going into my first interview process, I'd talk about the fact that, I used to work on a chicken farm and, really hard work. It was pretty horrible work as well, but I turned up every single weekend. I did that for a very long period of time because again, I stuck it out. I am resilient. I am hardworking. I talk about the fact that I started jobs, fairly early, and I was young because that's what I wanted to do. I'm just a worker. Yeah. I talk about the businesses that I started with my friends. I started a scooter bit. I didn't know anything about scooters, right? But he did, and I could knock on people's doors who had kids that had scooters. Yeah. And they got broken. So again, little things like that can try and de-risk it for a sales leader, and also show your personality, right? It's a personality-led job. You want to make sure that you can connect with people really quick. And I'd say often the first few moments make a massive, massive difference. Yeah. They'll make their mind up as to whether they think you could be a good fit or not within first 1 to 5 minutes.
Yeah, 100%. I love that. And just as we're, I guess, on the roll, right? It is a tough job, right, for SDRs or people that are in tech sales. How do you switch off as a leader during your week or weekend?
I don't. I think it's a danger, right? I think you've always got work whirring. I play a lot of badminton.
Okay, nice.
So I play badminton every single Sunday at 3 hours on a Sunday.
Wow.
I like to read. I like to learn. I like to play the Xbox.
Nice.
When I get a chance to. So
nice.
All sorts of things. But I do genuinely, it sounds cliche, I do genuinely like learning about sales. I think that whole professional development piece, I'm reading Moneyball at the minute, seen the film. If you haven't seen it, watch it.
Nice.
Really good.
Is there a book as well?
There is a book. It's come from the book. The book's the original.
Right.
But yeah, just that sort of stuff.
Great stuff. So from my side of things, head of sales is a really interesting role. We're going to dive into that, but also I'd love to know your journey. With every guest we have, we take it back to education. Lots of people fall into sales. So from my side of things, we'd love to know how you got to the position of a head of sales and where the journey started from, maybe traditional education, school, university. Do you mind taking us back to where it all started?
Yeah, for sure. So I guess if we start at school to start off with, I think I performed quite well when I was younger. Sort of picked stuff up quite naturally. That was always handy. But wouldn't say I necessarily enjoyed it that much. It was just, sort of along for the ride. I got my first job when I was sort of 13, 14. I worked at a deli, a village down the road. Nice. Little Italian delicatessen. It was really nice. It was a Saturday job. I worked on a chicken farm. So I was sorting eggs.
Wow.
So they lay them on a conveyor belt and they come down. And I think if you want to know the meaning of resilience, that's probably quite a good place to start.
Funnily enough, I think one of our students who works in Dublin now as an SDR, he was working in a chicken farm or an egg farm, egg factory. Yeah. So second person I've met probably working.
It's a very common job. You'd be surprised.
Yeah. Is it?
They all come from somewhere.
Yeah. True. The volume they're doing as well.
Absolutely. I did that, and I think whilst I went to college to study business, economics, maths and accounting, so very sort of business focused, numbers focused. university was probably never the path for me. I think I knew that from a very early age. And it was very much how can I get out of education as opposed to extend it any longer than I needed to.
Yeah. So talk to me about that. Did you go down knowing you were going to sort of graduate and then go into another career, or was it sort of, talk to me about those dynamics. Did you finish the whole degree? What was your thinking behind going into that traditional education route? Because we get a lot of people that drop out of uni, come on to Entertech, and then find themselves 20 earning, 30, 45k in tech sales.
For sure.
They're like, Jack, I wish I did this earlier.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I can definitely resonate. I think I did a 4-year business degree, didn't teach me anything about software or sales. And you come out of it with over 50 grand debt, thinking, damn, that's a lot of time spent. So what was your journey then coming out of that? Did you finish the whole degree? And
So no university for me.
Oh, well, okay,
Yeah.
cool. So you went straight into...
straight into work
Nice.
after a little hiatus to try and work out what to do in my life.
Wow.
But yeah, for me, university was never going to be the path. I was convinced to apply by one of my lecturers.
Yeah.
Because again, she couldn't understand why anyone wouldn't want to do it. I actually looked for an apprenticeship to start off with.
Interesting. I think a lot of the lecturers as well at schools are graded.
It's a
they've got
KPI,
their KPIs,
right?
yeah. So
yeah.
like over 90% of their cohort, or their year group has to go to a certain university. So
For sure.
I think it's definitely pushed on a lot of people, which is interesting. So you decided, cool, not for me.
Exactly.
Took a gap year or just
just a few months.
Nice.
So I was working at a restaurant at the time, working in front of a house. Just over summers, I was living in Cornwall at that point.
Cool.
And again, money was fairly good. You're working sort of 90 odd hours in the week, no days off. So
but
again,
the summers are busy as well.
exactly, absolutely hectic.
Yeah. But you learn a lot of skills, right?
Definitely.
That probably you can take into your other careers, that you're doing at the moment.
I think especially around the communication piece, right? When you're front of house and it's busy and obviously got people waiting for their food, you've got people waiting to be seated, you've got tables that need to be cleared. There's obviously a lot of jobs to be done.
Yeah.
And I think helping to, I guess, put people at ease and help make their dining experience enjoyable when, maybe there are fires burning in the background that you've got to try and cover up.
Literally,
it's a challenge.
I did a lot of bar work, sort of worked in pubs during my uni studies and even afterwards for a bit. And actually, it's such a good way to know how to deal with people and dealing with high pressure situations. Obviously, you say high pressure, but it's maybe not the stakes of like someone's dinner being, or their steak being cooked overdone. That's not high pressure, but it is dealing with, I guess, stressful situations and still staying.
And I think the intensity of it as well is the main thing, right? Like it's, certain other jobs you have like ebbs and flows.
Yeah.
Whereas when you're in service, you are absolutely in service, right? It's non-stop from the moment you start to the moment you finish, and
you're on your feet.
If you can breathe in between, that's always a positive, but definitely not a guarantee.
100%. So you did that. You sort of went through the hospitality realm for a little bit, and how did you move?
Exactly. So that was more when I was at college. It was sort of money on the table. Worked in the pub, worked in the restaurant. My first sort of career job was in recruitment.
Okay.
And interesting, it was actually my mum that found it. She said it offers you get up to 3 holidays a year, paid for by the company, which is great.
Yeah.
Uncapped commission, good earning potential. The salary was pretty poor, I'd say. I was on 15k as the first one.
15k.
Granted, it was a few years ago now.
Yeah.
But it probably just about paid the bills. But in terms of the upside to it, I think in my first year I went to Portugal with the company for a long weekend. That was great, really memorable.
Epic.
Of what I can remember of it.
Yeah.
I went skiing with them. I think a lot of people went to Las Vegas. So again, lots of perks. And I guess as an entry into sales, recruitment was a really, really good first step for me. Again, didn't love all of it. I was in it for sort of 5.5 years, so I did my time.
Nice.
But in terms of the skills that it helped me develop and the pace at which I developed as well, when you're putting the hours in and you are in that was very much a high pressure environment. Like it really does help to accelerate your career, definitely. And I wouldn't say I would be where I am today if I hadn't have gone through that journey.
Interesting. So was that in London or was that in Cornwall?
So that was actually in Bristol. So I moved back to Bristol for the first few years, there for about 5 years, across 2 different recruitment companies.
Okay.
So I think 2.5 years in one, about 2.5, 3 years in the other. The first one, very sort of boiler room, Wolf of Wall Street. Really? You've got to wear a sort of 2-3-piece suit, have to be clean shaven, type in, pocket square, you name it. Like it's
really, that's
bearing in mind it was totally non-customer facing. It's all on the phones. It felt a bit annoying. But the second one was a much more mature environment. So first one, very KPIs driven, very process driven. You pull a job, you're sending 3 CVs to it that day. You're absolutely following up tomorrow. And everything was like structure, process. The second one was with much older people.
Okay.
So people have sort of been in recruitment. They'd earned the stripes.
Yeah.
And it was very much you find your own style, you find your own rhythm. Great for some people, not for others. I think if you were to probably launch in that environment, it would be really challenging because you don't have the guidance.
Yeah.
But if you've already learnt that discipline and built that structure in advance, again, it's quite nice to have a bit of a sort of change of pace.
Yeah.
On the back of that, whilst I think recruitment was really, it did have enjoyable elements to it, and you earned some really good money. I felt quite transactional in the work that I was doing. Especially as a recruiter, you're charging, I'd say, fairly high fees. But you're not just charging it for that placement, you're charging it for the other 3 or 4 that didn't work out. And when you look at the value to a business on the back of it and the opportunity cost of not having that person in place, it's really significant. But they didn't always see it in that way. So again, you weren't always necessarily appreciated for the work that you were delivering, even when you did a good job.
Interesting.
So decided to make the step into tech sales.
Nice.
So joined a company called Stint. So it was a nice quasi between sort of staffing elements and the tech side.
Nice.
So essentially we partnered with hospitality restaurants, cafes, bars, pubs, etc., and university students. So within restaurants, you've got these sort of 2-3 hour peaks, like I said earlier, in those lunch and dinner periods.
Yeah.
And what do university students want? They want flexible, short shifts. They don't want to do a 10, 12 hour day.
Yeah.
So essentially all we do is we pair them up. It was done through an app.
Nice.
But rather than being a traditional agency, put a job advert out, like this was something that was actually built into their rota. It was changing the operating model.
Interesting.
So joined them as a BDM.
Nice.
Field-based, fully in person, knocking on doors.
Really nice, yeah.
Walking into restaurants in the pouring rain and asking the owner to have a conversation with you is always interesting. And was quickly promoted into a team lead role. So I took on the Bristol and Bath sort of Southwest office, had a couple of people working for me. That was my first introduction into leadership.
Yeah.
And then within a couple of years there, I was head of sales.
Nice.
So again, team of I think 16, 17 SDRs, AEs, AMs.
Wow.
Sales managers, all for SMB. So yeah.
Nice. And what was the difference, I guess, from recruitment to tech sales? You said recruitment was really tough and sort of ran its course, but what was the difference?
For
which
sure.
you enjoyed?
So I'd say it was less the difference between recruitment and tech sales and more the difference in environment. So in recruitment, I owned my own desk. I was fully responsible for the success or the failure of it. And everything that I generated was through me, be that on the candidate or the client side. The reason I wanted to join a tech company and a startup tech company was around the opportunity to build and see the influence of, or the impact, of the work that I'd actually delivered. So again, in those younger sort of startup environments,
yeah,
the work you do today, you'll see the impact of that tomorrow. I pride myself on delivering value or delivering impact. So to be able to see the impact of the work that I was doing and the work the team was doing, that was really, really pretty cool.
Amazing. And what advice would you give to someone who's looking at joining an early stage startup? Like, what would you say to look out for? Any red flags? Like, what makes a good opportunity to join?
Yeah, buckle up.
Strap in.
I think people often say startups are fairly hectic. There's obviously lots of pivots to it. What you're doing today isn't necessarily what you're going to be doing tomorrow, and you've got to, I guess, be willing to embrace the opportunity that it provides, as opposed to feel daunted about just how much change there's going to be. So, I mean, I guess the learnings. I mean, my third startup now. The main learnings I'd have would be pick a product where there is like already a clear like product market fit. So it's not to say you can't join something where there isn't and help on that journey as well. But I think if the founder has already proven that people are not just willing to buy this product, but willing to stick with it as well, and it's solving a genuine problem, you've already got over that first hurdle. I think you'll find some startups where the founder is kind of bringing on a salesperson or someone a bit more junior to help them figure out that first step. And again, there's nothing wrong with that. But equally, you don't necessarily know if you're joining a dud or not.
Yeah.
And again, the stats show that the majority of startups are duds and they don't stick it out. So,
Yeah.
if you can de-risk it for yourself, it's a great opportunity for quick progression.
Yeah. And I guess all three of the startups you were part of, had they gone on to be successful companies? Was there any that you were part of a dud, or I guess you don't have to answer that question, but I'm guessing there'll be other companies that did better than others.
For sure. So I think you can look at all three of them. So with Stint, I joined a little bit later on in the journey. I was, I think, 30th hire. I joined with 7 or 8 other salespeople. So we're very much, product market fit is there. We've got paying customers. They're retained. How do we now scale this? How can we push it to the next level? So we launched, I think, 29, 30 cities within the first 12 months of being there. So it's like a marketplace.
And was that like a bootstrap company, or was it seed?
VC. Yeah, exactly. So it was private investor, but again, it was funded. So there are obviously fairly high expectations in terms of the growth that we were delivering.
Yeah.
But yeah, really good fun. Pushed it forward significantly into the multi-millions in ARR, which is great. The second one I joined much earlier. So I think we were sort of 6-7 people when I joined. I was their sort of first main sales hire. Wasn't there for as long. Hopefully helped sort of put some structure and process in place, and then decided the time was right to move on.
Yeah.
For both of us onto pastures new.
Yeah.
Again, hopefully delivered a level of value. You'll have to ask them.
Yeah.
And then where I'm now at Outmin. So again, similar probably stage to where I was at with Stint. They'd had salespeople in place for a while. They were looking to bring on a slightly more sort of seasoned leader to, I guess, put that structure and process in place, move away from what I'd call like people-led sales, where everyone's got their own unique ways of doing things. You're relying on people's sort of intelligence and intuition towards something that is potentially slightly more proven, more scalable, more structured. And that's, I guess, what we're in the process of doing at the moment. And again, like building that team out slowly but steadily. So
interesting. And is that sort of seed or Series A? Or?
So we're between sort of seed and Series A.
Okay, nice.
Interim round there.
Good stuff.
But we're probably pushing about sort of 2 million in ARR. Give or
Interesting.
take.
And we were speaking before about having processes in place, and you come to the end of the week and you're realizing, wow, there's so much to cover. What's actually, how have I pushed the needle, or have I, achieved, towards my goals? So, from your standpoint, what processes are you putting in? I'm just intrigued from a head of sales standpoint. What are you looking at on a daily basis, or what kind of structures and processes are you putting in place for
sure.
SDRs and AEs?
Yeah, everything. So it's interesting you say that, because we've actually been looking at it again this week. So if I look at my journey within Outmin so far, I think first maybe month or so was literally just learning, just trying to absorb as much as possible, like look around. I then went full on sales. I was the SDR, right?
Nice.
Because I think even as a sales leader, if you don't put yourself in the trenches and you can't, see and experience and feel what other people are going through on a day-to-day basis, it's really difficult to empathize and then put effective structure in place. Because it's safe to say that although I've been able to influence change much faster here compared to at Stint, I guess what took me 18 months there has taken me maybe 3 months here. Like, it's different, right?
Yeah.
There are fixed methodologies and structures that you can work to, but they're implemented in different ways. There's nuance to it. So after I'd done the first sort of 3 months of selling, did a bit of sort of AEing, if you want to call it that, so a bit of closing, I then started looking at the structures that we put in place. So who are we going after? So what are the kinds of businesses that don't just buy our product, but get value and impact from it later on down the line? Within those companies, so obviously look at those characteristics. Who are the kinds of people that we want to be going after? What are their job titles? What's the demographic? What's their education profile? What sorts of companies have they worked in previously? Have they been in the job for a long time? Have they only just been there? So there's loads of stuff that a leader should be doing around like pointing an SDR in the right direction. And that I think is a really, really important thing. I think if you just, as an SDR, dumped in there and say, go and sell it, it's a really sort of dangerous position to be in, because you just don't know. And if they don't know, like it's pretty optimistic to think that someone's going to be able to work it out for themselves.
Definitely.
And from there, you can just follow the process the whole way through. So, we know who we're calling, we know who we're trying to get through to. how do we get through to them? So is it email? Is it LinkedIn? What can marketing do to support me? Am I going to call them? If I do, when am I going to call them? How many times am I going to call them? And we look at it as something called like a sequence or a cadence. So it's a set of steps. Typically, you'll want something that's multi-channel because, for example, I responded to a LinkedIn message, which is why I'm here.
Yeah.
But equally, I might never look at LinkedIn.
Yeah.
So if you just keep bombarding on LinkedIn, it's never going to go anywhere. And equally, you'll get some people that love cold calls. Not all, but
Yeah.
I think if it's a quality cold call, it's well thought out. There's a reason for making it, and it's targeted. Then I think people are often very open to it, more so than salespeople might realise. And again, you can just follow that the whole way through to close.
Nice.
What does discovery look like? What steps needed to take place? What questions do we ask? Who needs to be involved in that process? What assets and resources do we send them along the way to help educate them, help them make that buying decision? So when I talk structure and process, I'm really trying to talk every single minute detail. We want to give people the opportunity to put their own stamp on it and use their personality and use their intelligence.
Yeah.
But equally, if we know what good looks like, why do we not just show you what that path is?
Agreed. And I guess it depends on the firm and the structure, but in terms of like KPIs, what are you putting down in place for your SDRs or A's? Like, will the A's be self-generating business, or will they be expected to focus on qualifying and closing? But in terms of like the SDR side, which obviously we're excited to hear about. Yeah. What would a day in the life of an SDR be at your firm?
Yeah, for sure. Really, really good question. So there's a really interesting book by Aaron Ross called Predictable Revenue. And it basically was where the SDR AE model came from, right? Before that, primarily it was full cycle. You'd have one person doing the full whack. And this idea was introduced of maybe we have slightly more specialist roles. And I think there's a lot of sales leaders out there that people talk about 10 meetings a month or 12 meetings a month. It's like, if you hit 12 meetings a month, like, you're going to succeed. But like, that's not really ever come from anywhere. Like, it might be a benchmark, but like, it might be 10 meetings for one company, it might be 20 for another, it might be 3 for someone in enterprise, where the sales cycle is much longer, but you can close a significantly higher percentage of them. So when it comes to actual KPIs, we would just reverse engineer it. How much money do we want to make on a monthly basis in revenue? Okay, how many deals is that based on our average deal size? Okay, how many proposals do we need to send to get that many deals? So you can literally work it all the way back to how many first stage meetings do we need to book? How many conversations do we need to have to book those meetings? And then how many calls do we need to make to have those conversations? So our main KPI for SDRs would be around meetings, but we're starting to work out the actual number.
Day in their life, what would they be doing in terms of like how many calls would they be making?
For sure.
I guess coming into the office, what would that look like if you're a fresh-eyed SDR coming into the industry and they're working in the space? What would 9 till 5 look like?
Absolutely. So we're going to be going for an in-person model. We're all fully remote at the minute, but I think we put a lot of value on FaceTime. And I think, especially as an SDR, if you're less experienced, you want to learn from osmosis. Like, you want to overhear other people's calls, know what good looks like, and also know the kinds of things you want to be avoiding as well. In terms of like calls made, like as many as possible. I think if you segment your day well around like knowing who you're calling and then like having those conversations, like, there's no reason you can't be hitting sort of 50, 60 plus a day. There's a lot of, I guess, conflicting opinions about, is it quantity or is it quality? And in my mind, it's definitely a balance of both, but it's only logical to say that if the quality of your work remains the same, if you do more of it, you get a bit more meetings, right?
Yeah, exactly.
It's not rocket science, but yeah, I think as an SDR, if you're aiming for sort of 3-4 meetings a week with us, then that would put you in a really, really strong position, and you definitely see the impact of the work that you're doing as well.
Nice. And I guess this is a bit of an off-topic one, but would love to know from your experience as a salesperson, or before you became a sales manager, doing the account executive closing side of things, what was the biggest deal you've closed? And tell me like one of the wildest stories from your sales career.
Biggest deal, actually, I need to have a think about that one. But I guess when I joined Outmin, some of the first deals we were closing were probably around about sort of 25k in annual contract value, which is fairly significant. I think we're quite proud of our metrics as well. We close a third of the first meetings that take place, which is really strong for SMB. And they close on average in 20 days. So again, it's when people want it, they really want it and they move quickly. In terms of wildest stories, I did had lined up anyway, a 180k contract in recruitment. So it's a 15k a month retainer to deliver 3 hires a month, which we turned down because there were concerns around whether or not as a company we could deliver on it. And I think that one hit pretty hard. So I think when you see all that commission sitting on the table and you can see 150% of your target sat there guaranteed for the next 12 months. In my mind, it was very much like, why can't we make this work, as opposed to
quite an
tough one to swallow.
Yeah, honourable thing to do, I guess, too, on the flip side from your firm and their management. That's
exactly.
And I guess it's not spoken about enough, but what are the toughest things about being in sales or software sales for someone coming into the industry? What should they be aware of? Yeah,
for sure. I think don't be fooled by how much hard work it actually is. I know people often talk about the money, and by all means there is a great opportunity to make fantastic money, especially earlier on in your career and like without a formal education, like a university education. That's really like a real positive. But it is a graft. And if you actually want to succeed, if you want to be a top player that does make the big bucks, like you need to be willing to put a shift in and, take accountability and do the learning.
Agreed. Completely agree with that. And I guess in terms of non-negotiables, what would be 3 non-negotiables for someone joining your team as a sales development representative or account executive, someone on your team, in your corner?
For sure.
What would you want from them in their first 6 months?
Yeah, so I think in terms of top 3 sort of traits or less skills, more traits that I'd be looking for. I think hardworking absolutely has to be one of the top ones. Resilience is always key. Again, it might sound cliche because it comes up every time for a reason. And then I think the third one is really difficult to put my finger on. I might say coachable. But even beyond coachable, I think it's almost that, I don't know, like intrinsic motivation or like accountability that like you're not going to rely on me to make you successful. Like, I'll give you the tools by all means. I'll support you along the way. I'll help you get there. But like it has to be something that you want yourself and that you're willing to, I don't know, just take initiative. Do you know what I mean? Like take initiative and go and do the learning. If you're struggling with cold calling, okay, how can you do that? Yes, you can talk to me, but like maybe you, do some learning yourself online, or you read some books, or you could reach out to other SDRs in the industry that have maybe been there a little bit longer than you and say, look, this is something I'm struggling with. Like, would you be happy to help me? I think a lot of people are willing to mentor and guide, but like the best sellers I've ever worked with are the ones that do take that initiative. They are proactive. They do take accountability for their own learning and aren't relying on other people to sort of gift it to them. Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think if you're proactive, number one, you're going to learn more, but also you're going to be more successful because you're actually taking initiative to get stuff done. Definitely. And the same with the hard working piece as well. I think if we're looking at the job of an SDR, typically it's going to be fairly call heavy, but if not, and it's other tasks, the more you do it, the better you're going to get. It's just swings at the ball. That's all it is. Definitely. And looking at your career, before we kick this off on LinkedIn, you obviously gone through the ranks quickly and now a head of sales. I'm guessing you're in your 20s or 30s looking at you right now, but how have you achieved so much so quickly? And what advice would you give to someone coming up through the ranks? Because what I realized in my career was that you've got to be proactive in terms of, managing up. You've got to manage up to your managers and show them the work you're doing. But also if you want that promotion, you have to ask for it 6 to 12 months before. It's not just going to land on your plate. So you've really got to, I guess, be forceful in a good way to make sure you're going to get that promotion, because you're competing against, people externally that might be hired, but also your peers internally. So what would your advice be to someone who is in an SDR or account executive role, or coming into the industry wanting to get promoted and do really well to sort of rise through the ranks? Yeah, I think going back to that hard working piece, and it's not to say that other people didn't also work hard, but like I really went for it. I think in that first recruitment job, typically it was in the office before 8 typically you weren't out of the office before 7, although you might have finished at 5. If you left before 6, you were leaving early.
Yeah.
Again, I'm not saying you have to work in those kinds of environments, but equally, you know, if you do more work, like, you're going to get better. Like, it really is that simple.
Yeah.
And I'd say I've continued to work hard the whole way through up until now. Like, even now, I'm on a training course in the evenings, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursdays, starting sort of 8:30, 8:30 in the morning. I'm not finishing until at least 8, 8:30 in the evening. And that's, you know, north of 10 years into the career. And it's because I'm still hungry for it, right? So I'm not satisfied, you know, being here in another 5 years' time. I want to keep progressing. I want to keep getting better. I don't know everything. And then that second point you made about managing upwards, I think when I look back at the majority of the promotions I've received, it's because I've done that job before I've been given the title. So if we take stint as an example, started off as a BDM or a BDR or an SDR, again, whatever you want to call it. Was very happy to do that work. But because I'd sort of been there and done it a little bit before in the recruitment days, I picked it up very quickly. So rather than saying, cool, I'm just going to go start selling, well, I started helping other people to understand it, and I helped them to, you know, learn what the job was going to be and how they could be successful. And obviously that was recognised. It's like, well, hey, look, we're looking to open an office in Bristol. That's obviously where you're from. Like, would you be happy to, you know, take on the responsibility of supporting a few other people in their learning? Okay, do that. Again, get a few more team members. My director at the time, I can't remember how long he was there for, it was north of 12 months, but he moved on to pastures new. But by the time he'd moved on, I was already, you know, supporting him significantly in his work, working with the co-founders.
Yeah.
So it kind of made sense that I would just naturally fall into that head of sales position because I was already doing it.
Yeah.
And I think it's not to say that you will always be, you know, in situations where you can do that, and you might have to ask for it and ask what are the next steps. But if you're an SDR looking to become an AE, for example, well, look, you want to be watching the videos. You want to ask every now and again to sit in one of the meetings. You want to, you know, write down what you think went well and what could be improved upon. You want to go and, you know, research what it means to be a good AE. You want to go and find AE within your own company, within another company, and ask for that mentorship.
Yeah.
And if for whatever reason you can't get that AE job there, go and find one.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, you just have to go and own it.
Again. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because no one's going to give it to you.
Yeah.
Like, it's really rare that someone's just going to gift you something.
Definitely.
So you have to take accountability for it, responsibility for it.
100%. And then going into, we spoke about, you said the great thing about sales is you don't have to have a formal education to earn the big bucks or do very well. Where do you stand on hiring SDRs or entry-level people without a university degree or certain experience? Like, have you hired people from different backgrounds before, and where do you stand on that?
Yeah, definitely. So I've hired people from all sorts of different backgrounds in the past, and I've seen very little correlation between you know, whether someone's got a university background or not and how well they do. If anything, it's probably edging more on the fact that those that start a little bit sooner and that are hungry for it can, you know, get an edge, and that's typically because they're sort of 3-4 years ahead of their peers. But yeah, I think it makes very little difference.
Yeah.
But yeah.
And where do you stand on the state of education today in terms of like the value of a university degree?
I think it can be really valuable, and I also think that you can go to university and learn some really, like, interesting stuff. And I think if someone wants to as well, right? You either have to because you want to be a, you know, doctor, lawyer, vet, accountant, like, that's absolutely fine. Or you're really passionate about that subject, and you might not, you know, directly use it in your career, but you just love learning about history. You love learning about something else. Absolutely fine. To me, I will look at someone at the same standing if they have or haven't been to university.
Yeah.
Like, it really is that simple. It's more about, you know, the personality you have, the traits you show, the research you've done, you know, what you can bring to the table.
Yeah.
And that's not always necessarily a piece of paper.
Yeah. Good stuff. And I guess for you, what's excites you most in your career going forward, the work you're doing? You know, what would your day-to-day, I guess, look like in terms of, I know you're mentioning you're reshifting a few things.
Yeah.
But would you be managing, looking at people's KPIs and metrics, or would you be, you know, contributing to revenue? Like, what does a head of sales day-to-day look like? Are you in the office early, leaving late, I guess?
Yeah, so for me at the minute, it's a bit of both.
Yeah.
So I'm still like directly contributing to that overall figure,
Yeah.
which actually is really enjoyable. I think I did less of that towards the end of my time at Stint, and it's been really nice to sell. I mean, that's why I did it in the first place, right? It's what I enjoy. I guess moving forwards, I think what really excites me is how quickly the landscape is changing. And we run, I'd say, like a very lean tech stack. You get some companies that, you've got 10, 20, 30 different tools that people can leverage, but it just gets quite noisy. We've tried to do the opposite, small, tight-knit team, high performers, very high value tech stack where we're utilizing as much of it as possible. I think what we're seeing is like a shift in terms of what tech can actually do. And that's not just in sales, that's just in the world. That's what we're doing at Outmin. And there's a lot of tasks that were maybe less enjoyable, more like admin heavy, more menial, things like account research or finding mobile numbers or finding who you need to go after that can now be automated. And the goal will be for salespeople to just spend more time selling and less time on other stuff. So like the jobs and what the jobs actually look like, be that head of sales, CROs, SDRs, AEs, like the jobs are looking different today than they were a year ago. And I think if you fast forward a few years as well, like it's going to be a totally different landscape. So we've got an opportunity to really leverage that.
Nice, love that. And then last question I'd say was on tech stack. You touched upon it briefly. What tech stack are you guys using for your go-to-market team?
Yeah, really good question. So HubSpot is what we use as a CRM. For data, we have actually put that to one side and we use a tool called Clay through one of our agency partners.
Nice.
And that identifies people that are hopefully in market for a product like Outmin. It helps us identify what companies we work at, who we should be going after within those companies. It helps us do the account research for it. It then helps us find their contact details. It automatically puts it into the CRM for us. It then will then allocate that to the sales reps so that they can focus on having a clean list of high intent prospects for them to call and sell to. And again, less time spent on the rest of it. There's some other stuff we're using. There's one called Weasley, which is like automated video messaging. It's really cool.
Weasley.
And I'm sure we'll start implementing some more tech in the future. But a lot of it will be tech that's implemented in the background to facilitate the structure and process of the company, as opposed to be like a software that a sales rep has to use.
Yeah, got it. So more to save time internally, I guess.
Exactly.
Got it. Great stuff. And then I guess final advice for someone breaking in to tech. Number one, where can they find you, and what would your last takeaway be for anyone looking to break into software sales? Yeah,
for sure. So I'm on LinkedIn, Matt Cope. You can find me there. My mobile number's on there as well. You can cold call me. Nice. Might regret saying that. If you're looking to break in, I think there's a huge amount of noise. So for context, I put an SDR job advert out last week. Within 24 hours, I had at least 50 applicants. And there were some really strong people in there as well. But you want to be first to the party. But if you're just going to rely on clicking a CV send button and hoping for the best, like, again, you're gambling, right? Yeah. There's only one cold call that I received. Wow. He got an interview, fairly obviously, because that's the job.
Yeah.
If you cold call me and I don't pick up, call me again. Like that is the job. Like in the same way as I was saying earlier, like you want to be doing the job that you want to be in before you're there.
100%.
Well, that's exactly what this guy's doing. He's researched. He's never been in tech sales before. He has no formal education. Actually dropped out of education. But he's been learning what it is to be an SDR. It's a well-timed, well-thought-out cold call. We'll have to see where it goes. But again, he's put himself in the situation where he could potentially succeed. Yeah. And if he doesn't do it with me, he'll definitely do it with someone else.
Nice. Love it. Well, thanks so much for coming in, Matt. Pleasure to have you on, and look forward to seeing where the journey goes.
Thanks for having me.
Cheers.